first keynote speaker is Freha Ashard, who's the Senior Manager for Accenture Security at Accenture, key sponsor or supporter of CyberFest. Great to see you.
Good to see you too. I'll just share my screen and we can get started. So just as we get started, I'll just give a brief background on myself. So as Phil says, my name is Freha Ashard, and I'm part of Accenture, working specifically in the cybersecurity group. So I'm delighted to be here today and actually speak to you all about the emerging trends in cybersecurity and what we're actually seeing from a commercial perspective. But before I get in, I just wanted to give a brief background on myself, really. And the reason I want to do that is just to show the non-typical journey that I had into cybersecurity, and really that there's a multitude of avenues of entry that we can all enter into this domain. And then actually having, or not having, should I say, a STEM background isn't necessarily a barrier. So hopefully you can all see that okay. So I actually graduated back in 2008 with a law degree, and law was something I wanted to do ever since I was in high school. So I went to university, got my law degree, and while I was at university, I thought, do you know what, intellectual property is for me. So I then graduated from university and went on to work as a trademark attorney, and I thought, this is for me. Didn't quite pan out that way, and I wasn't quite enjoying it. So I then went on and thought, I need to do something different. And I got a role with the local police force as a lay advisor, advising on hate crimes. It was a very unique role, and I had a brilliant time. But for a number of reasons, the contract came to an end. And it was actually coincided, for those that are familiar with the policing landscape in Scotland, when Police Scotland came into being. So I thought, okay, I need to get a job. So I thought, went along to an open day that a company was having called CGI back in the day. Sorry, it was Logica then, it's now CGI. And they were like, you could be suitable for security with your policing skills and your legal skills. And security was something I'd never considered. But I was given a really good overview, and I thought, you know, I'm up for the challenge. So I jumped into that role. I joined as a graduate security consultant, essentially. And I've basically learned on the job. I think as long as you have the aptitude to learn and the eagerness to be to constantly develop yourself, it's a great field. So I went from a legal background to policing to security. I stayed with Logica for a year and a bit, and then I jumped to Accenture, where I've been since 2013, so it's been a good 7 years now. And now I head up our security strategy team for health and public sector clients. So that's just to give you a brief background as to how I got to where I am today and working with a number of our clients on their security problems, but certainly not from a STEM background. And one of the quotes that's always stayed with me is that cybercrime was predicted, I think, is now the greatest threat to every person, every place, and everything in the world. And it's that relevance that I've always been attracted to. And in my career, I think that there's a slight diagram here about the different categories of cybercrime, and it's really to show the vast array of different sectors that cybercrime applies to. And I've been fortunate enough to work in most, not quite all, but most of these categories. And also, hopefully it shows the different variety of problems that you can get involved in and try and solve. And it's an ever-evolving landscape, as I'm sure you will come to hear. So that's just a little bit about me, how I got into security. And I must say, I have loved the challenge, hence I've been here for the last 7 years and constantly looking to learn and develop. When I was asked to talk about security trends, an area that we've just seen an explosion in recently is the impact from COVID-19. So we have seen some distinct trends as a result of the current pandemic that we're currently going through. So I thought it'd be good to talk about the COVID-19 specific trends and then also some emerging technologies. So if we kick off with the COVID-19 trends, what are we seeing? As we live through this pandemic, this global health crisis that I think is hopefully just a once in a lifetime occurrence, we are seeing the cybercrime landscape explode, essentially. Just as, you know, we're coming to terms with the health and medical ramifications of what we're experiencing, we're seeing a similar story within the cybercrime domain. And interestingly, and I must say unfortunately, cyber criminals are really up their game during this COVID-19 pandemic. We might have seen before more of a scattergun approach where spam was sent out to everyone and anyone, phishing attempts were made to anyone they could get their hands on. Now, cyber criminals across the landscape, across all sectors, across the maturity within the cyber criminal domains, we're seeing a very distinct shift from such actors going from small organisations to your large multinationals, to your government departments, to your critical national infrastructure suppliers, all categories of groups that have come under intense and renewed pressure as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. So we know with organisations, commercial organisations, sending huge swathes of their workforce to work from home. We're seeing the government having to step up across all its departments and services to help support citizens. And of course, critical national infrastructure speaks for itself. So whether it be phishing scams, disruptive malware, misinformation across the board, we have seen a massive uptick, not only in the amount, but also in the sophistication. And I want to come on to some of these in a little bit more detail. So when we talk about online scams and phishing attempts have been around for a very, very long time, but the dial has been turned under COVID-19, and make no mistake on that. Playing on people's anxiety in these times, the economic downturn, the mechanism and the engineering tactics that we've seen from threat actors has increased and essentially become much more mature in COVID-19. Hence, the likelihood of an attack being successful, therefore, has also increased dramatically. So whether it be the need for fiscal packages, the need for emergency benefits, or medicines, face masks, we're seeing all the key elements that each of us are being individually relatable to being exploited by COVID-19 phishing scams. And that's why in a recent report from Accenture Security, and you can see this from the Interpol reports as well, phishing attacks and scams have really concentrated on areas such as the offer for medical supplies, COVID-19 track and tracing apps, charitable donations is another area that we've seen the attackers really play on the vulnerability of the situation that we are essentially all in. And another really interesting area is the impact that we've seen from the malware. So yes, you might have seen the World Health Organization come under attack, hospitals have come under attack, universities themselves that have come under attack. And although ransomware as a threat vector is not new, what has been really interesting from a lot of the analysis done from the COVID-19 attacks that we've seen so far is that the attackers are again becoming much more sophisticated and really demanding sums of money that they feel are realistic for the organization to pay out. So perhaps previously where they might have been, give us X million, and that was, completely out of the remit of what an organisation could afford to pay. We're actually now seeing universities being targeted and asked for a sum of money which the attackers know the universities can pay out on, or the hospitals can pay out on. And again, that has been a fundamental shift, and where we have essentially seen attackers up their game in response to the COVID-19. Let's play on the emergency, let's play on the anxiety, but let's also try and maximise our gains and ask for something where vulnerable victims, where they have the pressure of dealing with everything else, are more likely to pay out because they can, because the sums are affordable for them, regardless of being, a significant loss. And from a security perspective, I would almost say, folks should not pay out, but unfortunately, we're seeing more and more organisations paying out due to the intensity of the situation they are in. Again, when we come to malicious domains, there has been a monumental increase of sites being registered with the keywords of COVID or Corona as part of the address. And again, this is all to assist with making sites feel real. And many of us might think, okay, we've got a good baseline of the understanding of these sites, but one must remember that if folks are looking for face masks or what track and trace are telling us, we're dealing with all of society here. So, and not everyone has the same maturity. So something that looks real or feels real in the intensity of the moment where you're anxious or you're desperate or you're vulnerable, threat actors have been very, very successful with these malicious domains. And of course, it's not just websites, it's cold calls, it's SMS, which we're seeing SMS attacks going through the roof as well. Drain the other two, but we're seeing data harvesting, malware, and also misinformation. So again, with the harvesting of malware, we're seeing a lot of remote access Trojans, spyware, all using these tools to essentially really facilitate COVID-19 phishing scams and campaigns. So and again, the misinformation, I'll quickly run through that, but we might have seen in the press, whether it be the vaccine development, whether it be how the virus is spread or not spread, we've seen essentially the whole plethora and the whole episode of COVID being used by cyber criminals, and essentially their business is booming. Our cyber defense teams, our incident response teams, our reconnaissance teams have never been busier, because the amount of activity in this area and the maturity to which it is being done has absolutely gone through the roof. So I just wanted to give a little bit of background on the COVID-19 situation, because as an emerging trend today, without doubt, it has exponentially grown this area for all of us in society, unfortunately. And as the pandemic, I am sure, changes and we go through different waves of it, I think there's, without doubt, you will see the cyber criminals also changing their tactics and their strategy in line with that COVID-19 situation as we progress. So I think it's going to be an area where all of us really need to step up and be vigilant and alert to these attacks. So that was a bit about what we're seeing, I suppose, in terms of the daily job and what the pressing priorities of the moment are. But I did want to touch upon emerging technologies where I think society will benefit hugely from. These will fundamentally change the way we live and work. But for these to be successful, it is without doubt that security has to be embedded in each and every one of these. And I want to cover three areas. I'll touch upon 5G, extended reality, and artificial intelligence. So we are now seeing more 5G technologies being adopted. It's an exciting area for us. Like I said, I think it'll bring in changes such as autonomous vehicles becoming more common as a result of these technologies being more embedded. But as security professionals and as individuals looking to break into this area, these are the type of issues that I think we really need to be thinking about from now. And how do we embed security into such technological advancements? So when we look at a technology such as 5G, yes, it has the potential to bring about a great benefit in terms of autonomous vehicles, like I said, but also what does that mean for individuals that are using these services? So what does it mean for our privacy? What does it mean for the location tracking that these services offer? How do we ensure as security professionals that data is gathered securely, is used securely, and is then stored securely? And only those that have a legitimate need to access that data can do so. And as we design services and goods that society will benefit from, it is absolutely paramount that these considerations are at the very forefront of our minds. It's something that I think about very often. And the way that we, from a practical example, is making sure that when we're working with clients to develop a service that might have 5G embedded, is to make sure security is a fundamental requirement and consideration right from the very start of that drawing board. Because if we don't get in early and we don't influence these solutions and devices as security professionals, the consequences, I think, for society at large, for people like you and me, will be devastating. So I think it's exciting, and I would say that from my perspective, autonomous vehicles, I know I mentioned it a few times, is an area that we're seeing a lot of work in. It's an exciting piece of exciting area to go in, but at the forefront of my mind does remain the vulnerabilities and the threats that exist, and whether that be you know, the number of devices that can be connected to a network and request different types of services. You know, could that lead to network jamming? Could that lead to denial of services? And if you have an ecosystem in a smart city where autonomous vehicles are in flight, what does that mean? What could the human impact what would the human impact be, sorry, if a 5G network went down and we were relying on cars and smart cities and traffic signals that were fully dependent on 5G services? So again, it's an up and coming area for us to really consider, but I think if done correctly could have an amazing benefit to society as a whole. The other topic that I wanted to touch about was extended reality. Extended reality is hopefully something that more and more of us are getting a chance to experience. For example, I know some of the games consoles now have headsets where you can almost be immersed in the game by being there. And extended reality is a very, very interesting one because it has the benefit to fundamentally open up new areas and jobs that simply weren't possible to groups of people. And the example that I always use and that I've seen myself work really well is where we have people deployed on oil rigs in really dangerous parts of the globe. And instead of sending out a whole group of people, you can actually, you know, keep some back, and those instructions and those processes and operating procedures can all be delivered through virtual headsets. And I think that is fantastic. And where we have seen that work well, it is actually quite mind-blowing. But the key thing there is, again, making sure that the actual device is secure, that the data that is feeding those extended reality and virtual reality systems is kept secure. And unfortunately, already we are seeing impersonation scams being delivered via both augmented reality and virtual reality systems, just like we see on the web. We've seen sensors being manipulated, so essentially the data is being corrupt, and therefore that has given misreadings and has led to a number of serious security issues. And what worries me is, as exciting as this technology is, if we see, if these services are not built securely, we could almost see these devices being corrupted. And if someone is, for example, an oil rig, depending on this VR set, and it's being compromised, we could see, you know, the next potential oil spill, for example. That is an extreme example, but one that is a very real probability. So again, it's as we look to see more of these services coming into deployment, I think it's an area that you know, security professionals coming up, and I really stress, hopefully the audience on this call, to really think what is the most innovative and creative ways of stopping the hackers, because as much as these technologies will bring change to our lives in a way that we cannot not imagine, we also need to be cognizant of threat vectors and threat avenues that exist. So that is some of the emerging tech that I think we need to be looking at as the next generation of threats that are possible. I'm also quite conscious that I've probably gone over my time. I'm happy to share my slides afterwards, but I also had some thoughts on artificial intelligence. They are related to the 5G and XR concerns that I've raised. So I will probably wrap it up there. So thank you for listening. My details are available through Claire and Phil, so if you do have any questions, please do reach out. And sorry, Phil, for going over time there.
So thank you, Freya, for that. That was fantastic. Thank you. And the trouble is there's so much you could talk about.
Yes.
There is a question about AI, but I think we'll come back to that in the panel session later on, which I think you're going to hang around for. That's great. One, just a general question. Do you think that COVID has made a fundamental difference to the way that people think about security, cybersecurity?
I think so, yeah. I think we've seen, just with the way that our lives have changed, so everyone's working remotely. We've had a lot less interactions. We're all on Zoom calls, for example, just like we are today, I suppose. And I think when we've seen Zoom sessions being hijacked, and if you're having a one-to-one, intimate conversation with a family member, for example, I think it's been brought to a new realization from parts of society that probably didn't consider it before. So short answer, yes.
Excellent. Right, well, thank you very much. And we'll see you again later.
Thank you very much.